Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game.
Hello. Um, Hi everybody. Sure hope you can hear me. Just gonna sorry. So what ended up happening here was um I have a new setup, as I'm sure you guys can see. Uh there's a cat in my new setup. My cat, it's not a random cat. And this did not start the way it should have. Let's start again. Let's start by saying the Habs beat the Bruins 4-1. Why does this always happen? Let's try again. So the Habs beat the Bruins 4-1. It was a hell of a game after a really boring third period. My mic is turned all the way up. Give me a second. Um yeah. Yeah. So it was a hell of a period hell of a game after a boring first period. I am not best form today, much like the Bruins. I do not want to compare myself to the Bruins because that's a real insult, but I gotta call it how I see it, right? So I just don't know where to start, guys. Uh, um, why don't I start by saying thank you everybody in the chat. I loaded up my chat today. Let's see how that goes. Um, Thank you everybody for stopping by. I know that, I know I was a little bit late coming in, so I appreciate you waiting patiently. Um, and yeah, I always appreciate seeing you guys in there. Um, Zachary Dion says that we can always start with Captain Nick. So we will, we will. I am here for you guys, whatever you say. But speaking of that, with it being a solo show, it's always nice to have you guys. Of course, your input is always really important, but at a game like this, and a game that's so exciting, and a show that I'm doing alone, it's always lovely to have you guys throwing stuff at me in the chat. And Sorry, I'm just so off balance right now. I think it's because I'm not used to this being how these games go. Because as the Sportsnet, I think it's a broadcast, was so happily telling us, the Bruins just don't lose to the Habs, and so cool, right? I can't even get started on that broadcast. I swear to God, it's just I gotta I gotta take a few deep breaths because honestly, I have friends who had to watch the Bruins broadcast, um, and I don't want to know their pain. So, a lot of people in the chat, I love to see you guys as per usual. I'm seeing our usuals: Claire, Trinka, Denis, Zachary, Romelli. So, Adam talking about the Guhle chat, which I will be saying stuff about that because I always have a lot to say about everything, including Kaiden Guhle. Um, let's start with Nick Suzuki, eh? I said let's start with Nick Suzuki, but here's the thing. I don't know where to start with Nick Suzuki because this has been such a great season for him. We had, you know, we had the rough start, not super productive, which he seems to be a slow starter. But whatever. That seems like a whole world ago. That seems like a decade ago. That seems like it has never existed. And I'm going to pretend it didn't exist because it doesn't matter, frankly, because right now when it matters, he is who he is, which is a damn good player. Um, Suzuki, I see, is hell of a. Ramelli says 2 points for Nick McKinnon tonight. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Um, this is gonna be my favorite bit because I know that I know that I have Avs fans who occasionally stop by because they're very kind to me. And out of context, I'm sure that they'd be like, "What the hell?" Um, so just gonna read on the chat a little bit. Alex says Suzuki is at 81 now, 81 points, 1 point short of an official point per game season. He'll get there. I have no doubt he'll get there. Bernardo says, personally, I think he's good. I gotta agree, you know. Um, Astronaut 991 says Suzuki really ended the comparisons with Koivu this season. Claire says to bring over the cat. Now, I would love to. However, I think there is a good chance that she might, bite, which I don't want her to do. Um, you know what? I think I'm sullying her good name. She's actually uh not that mean anymore. Which I love that for me. She's been obsessed with sleeping in my bed recently. So her name's Juno. And she is surely a cat. She was not my cat, and now she's my cat. And Cat is the new co-host. Um, Game Over Game Over Montreal. I would assume I sang your name like you're I'd assume that that is Andrew in the chat. It says Jake Evans 2.9. He needed a little boost. Um, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. Claire says, please bring her over. I'll bring her over after our first ad. That's a promise. I can do that unless she runs away, but she won't. She won't. So I'll bring her over after the ad. Um, Cricket says, sorry, not going to be a downer tonight. This is happy time. Yeah, totally agree. I don't need to talk about any of the issues from this game. I don't plan on it. Who cares? At this point, it's truly a who care moment. Um, so for those, sorry, I don't have my big water bottle today because I can't find it. Uh, Rick says Suzuki doesn't talk much. He just plays his best when the game is important. High hockey IQ, two-way player, makes others better, and he's there game after game. Yeah, I think the consistency really matters a lot. Um, sorry. I think the game after game, he's just constantly there, two-way player. I just think he's everything you could ask for, frankly, out of your captain and the guy who's supposed to step up and drive the bus. And I truly I was so sad to miss, the post-game Juno. I was so sad to miss the post-game last game because it would have been a hell of a post-game for me to be on, but, I'm glad Andrew got you guys. Um Oh, Radagast, Nick Suzuki also has a cat, right? Yeah, he does have a cat. Um, you know what? I wanna talk about Slav for a second, um, because I feel like in the conversation about how good Nick Suzuki has been, and his kind of chemistry with, Cole, I think we're, like, really it's been so I think the things that Slav has been doing has been so understated, in the way that we are not in a way, it's good because I think us not, um, pointing out the little stuff he does means that it's not rare enough for us to talk about. So, like, it's a double-edged sword where I think we're getting used to seeing him do some good stuff, but it also means that am I making a lot of sense? I don't feel like I'm making a lot of sense. Guys, I'm a little rattled right now. Um, I changed around my room, uh, kind of setup, and I don't do well with change. So my first stream a little bit rougher. Um, hmm. Also, yes, Nick does have a Bengal cat, not a hairless one. Two actually. I do want to talk a little bit about how bad the Bruins are. But before I do actually just want to finish my thought on Nick Suzuki. I think hopefully the Habs make the playoffs this coming season and people are forced to watch Nick Suzuki and really just appreciate the player he is. But even if they don't, I think he's really kind of stamped his name. I think he's really just made the impression. I think people are now starting to see what Habs fans see. I know, I know they. Sorry, I just saw Bernardo's comment. Um, and I know that I know people can get really. People are a pushback on Nick Suzuki, I think, because Habs fans talk a lot about Nick Suzuki. And there's this need to like piss Habs fans off, I think, that overtakes any logical uh kind of, you know, discourse. Um um, I also think that also just really quickly, I'm sure everybody knows this, but I just like to clear up. We all know that a lot of these like Twitter accounts and like Instagram posts and like I would even go as far as to say some content on some more official publications talks badly about the Habs because they get interactions through that. Um, there's a lot. Our fan base is strong and opinionated, and we'll say how we feel. And if people know they can get to us by talking shit about Nick Suzuki. And I truly, truly think it's gotten to the point where all of that ridiculous discourse that's at this point, I think the negative kind of um narrative on Nick Suzuki really is more just more just people actually just being willingly ignorant rather than before. I think people actually didn't know what a good player he was on top of being like willing to piss Habs fans off. I think at this point, anybody who is denying the player he is, how important he is, how massive of a part of this team he is just trolling us. Um, I think he's proven what he needs to, and we don't need to rehash that. But after all that philosophical discussion about Nick Suzuki, what a pass! Oh my god. I'm talking about the goal that was Cole Caulfield's goal, which is really good to see him on the score sheet because I feel like he's been snake bitten. And that was the let me just check my notes. The second goal for the Habs to make it 2-0. Um, that was obviously the pass by Nick. Also some great work in the zone by Slav. That entire kind of shift was a lot of Slavkovsky being an absolute monster. And you know, I think it pays off. Bernardo says Yokiharu got rinsed. Yep. Just reading some of the chat just to get caught up. Um, I see, and this is from a little while ago. Outrage says, I feel like Slap is going to be an amazing player in the playoffs, or I think he has that potential at least. I think so too. Um, this is a guy who was um, drafted, and a big reason that was given was one, he's a unicorn. Second, his character. Now, those two things are very abstract. And there's a lot to be skeptical of when it comes to those kind of terms. But I think in this case, he is genuinely a unicorn. And he is genuinely of the kind of character that clearly steps up under pressure. I think it's nice that he's not relied on. I think that probably helps him. Or not relied on. He is relied on because our first line is relied on. But he doesn't have to be the guy. I still feel like at the end of the day, out of our forwards at least, it's Nick Suzuki who's the guy. Um, and that's okay. That's totally fine. In the playoffs, I think he can. Sorry. In the playoffs, I feel like he can really. I don't know, man. This kind of the swagger we saw today, the as Andrew would say, the hick um, stuff. Like I love that, and I feel like that comes out of him in these moments where it's not consistent, obviously, because he's so young. But in the moments that he sometimes in these moments you really see him step up and have this absolute confidence, and it's worth so much. Um, Frederick gives us a update which says the game is over. Avs 7, Blue Jackets 3. That's great. Love that. Unfortunately, the Habs have put themselves in a position where we do have to scoreboard watch out of town a little bit, with that losing skid. But hey, you live and you learn. Um, I'm seeing some news about Fowler, Jacob Fowler. Um, Brenner says Fowler signed. What a great night. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was not confirmed just yet. It was reported by a trusted source, I guess. I it's Marco. Geez, I forget his last name. He's from um. Oh dear. If anybody remembers, can they please drop it in the chat? I'm really sorry. But I there was a very substantiated a very um a rumor that looks to be true. Sorry, guys. It looks. I wouldn't be shocked to see that that is the truth, but um, I think we'll get confirmation soon. Oh, Engels also confirmed it. Yeah. To be honest, I don't really understand the. I know one of the kind of discussions that we had going into uh we I know one of the discussions that we had going up into this kind of movement is or sorry, this moment of the contract was the AHL versus NHL contract signing thing by Fowler, and you know which one. I truly, to be honest, I get it, but I don't get it well enough to explain it. I think, but essentially, I think there's two different versions of a contract he could have possibly. I think there's three options. One was he goes back to Boston College. Second, he signs a contract with the Habs, and it's an NHL contract, I believe. And the third is a an AHL contract, essentially. I don't understand the specifics of how that, like burning off the ELC, et cetera, counts or kind of works, but I will leave that to someone more able to explain those things. But you know what? Next, I think I'd like to talk a little bit about how, well, seems like it's not confirmed yet. Who knows, man? Who knows? This is one of those fun moments where you're like, who has the connection? Um, I see a question from Rick that I would really like to talk about. How about I would love to touch on that in the third segment. I'm going to copy paste that into a notepad to make sure I don't forget it because I do really, really want to touch on that question. It's a question about putting Kapanen in for Armia. And I do have my thoughts on the third line. But first, I would like to send you guys over to pre-recorded Andrew. Um, and he will tell you a little bit about our great sponsors over at Le Saint Motel. See you soon.
Looking to make awesome memories with your friends? Take some promotional pictures or videos for your business? Check out Le Saint Motel in Montreal's Sud-West borough. It's an amazing selfie studio located in Montreal's historic Chateau Saint Ambroise, right next to Inchoo Bijoux. It boasts 12 plus unique decors for you to enjoy and make memories with. Hop into their iconic heart-shaped ball pit or transport yourself back in time to Expo 67. Le Saint Motel can also come to you with mobile decor setups available to rent for events, including setup and takedown, or you can head to lesaintmotel.com right now for more details, or to check out their amazing decors that are always being updated. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out.
Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry. I just tried to grab her for, as promised to Claire, and then her nail got stuck in my sleeve, and then she started hissing, and I started panicking, and it was a whole thing. Okay, you know what? You know what? I'll try again next ad? I don't know. Guys, she's actually really scary. We weren't able to take her to the vet without giving her those sweet, sweet happy pills for a long time because she was really that aggressive. Recently she's like really softened up in her old age, I guess. And ever since my other cat, we used to have two, ever since one passed, she's just become uh a lot nicer. And I can see her in my screen just absolutely glaring at me, but it's fine. So before I get into the next topic, which is dancing on the Bruins grave, um, I will first just remind you guys, as Andrew did, to please like and subscribe. We really appreciate your support, and I really appreciate you guys being here. Jay Carter, I believe of Lockdown Blue Jackets. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, you know what? Whoever that is, they say Kitty. It's Kitty. Yes, correct. So we're apparently getting a good old insider off. Terrible phrasing. Um, but we're getting a good old insider saying two different things, and I guess we'll see who's who. Um, oh no, that is not who that is. My bad. Apologies. Um, Claire says thanks for trying, Kay. I promise I did. Um, so let's talk Bruins. And I saw this like great tweet, and I can't remember who it's by, so I'm gonna take a quick look to try and see, and hopefully I don't get distracted while I am there. But it was this hilarious tweet that was like just kind of talking about the Bruins' downfall, and it was a Leafs fan who tweeted it. They said, I'm just gonna go back to this because it genuinely I don't want to get it wrong. Um, yes, Flo Buds, at Joey Ferg said, "When the dragon you'd always hope you'd slay just dies of old age." Um, and you know, coming from a Leafs perspective, I totally understand that. Um, and I think that like I don't know if the Habs ever had that kind of I don't wanna say rivalry because they did. They did have an insane rivalry, and they do. Like, clearly, there's a lot of bad blood. There still was in today's game. Holy hell, can we talk about that fight? Can we talk about that fight? Um, but, sorry. But How about this? I'll post that to the chat. Do you think that the Habs that's a dragon that the Habs needed to slay? Or do you think that that's a more of a Leafs problem? Um, and I say problem very generally. I'm not like this. I'm not taking this moment to shit on the Leafs, which, haha, sucks. Um, but Zach Payne says that can confirm the Bruins' downfall is infinite, infinite. English is my second language, guys. Let me just clear that up. It's less satisfying than if the Leafs had won in the playoffs last year, forced the Bruins to fire Montgomery, and then proceeded to die. Um, yeah, I don't know if the Habs have that same kind of yearning. This sounds a lot more romantic than I'm meant to make it because yearning feels like such a romantic thing. I don't know. Um, but I definitely feel like out of the two teams, the fan base or the team that could have really used being the ones to take the Bruins down were the Leafs. I think the Habs just I, here's the thing. I think what happened is because Zach says it's because the Habs have less Bruins related trauma. That's it. I think it's because the Habs never did such a pivotally traumatizing thing to, or the Bruins never did such a pivotal, big, well-known thing to the Habs the way that they did to the Leafs, um, that it doesn't feel quite as desperately needed. I don't know. Um, sorry. Um, I'm really popular and my Fitbit is going off, guys. Um, um, just reading the chat, catching up on our Bruins thoughts, seeing a lot of them. Um, Adam also points out that more of a lease things, the Habs and Bruins just went in different directions. I think that's also true. It feels like when the Habs really were slash are in a position where they can be a threat, the Bruins just like it never lined up. I feel like is the way that I'm trying to explain it is it never really in the last little while anyways. Like we can talk about like the long history of everything, but in the last little while it never feels like they were at a point where they were competitive. Um uh Andrew points out that there's been periods of time where the Bruins dominated the Habs, but in their most dominant era, the Habs upset them constantly. Hey man, there's a lot of history there, and I dare I say I think the Habs come out on top when it comes to an overall body of work. But in the last few years, clearly they've struggled. They had what it was like. I still remember the overtime win that was Kaiden Guhle scored that goal in the Bell Center was the first time that the Habs had beat the Bruins in the Bell Center in a long time. So I'm gonna catch up on that a little bit on some of our I'm just reading some of the trash talk about the Bruins, and you guys were hilarious. Kinda going back, one of the things that Rick said is it's something watching a team who traditionally had a ton of swagger like Boston realize that they will be terrible for a few years while they rebuild. Um, man, I hope that it's more than a few years, but this is not a team I recognize, you know? Like, yeah, the Habs and the Bruins had their, skirmishes this game. Um, but ultimately it didn't feel like the big bad Bruins. It just felt like another bad team that was just mad about not being very good. Um, Melly says, just hoping Boston does not win the lottery. Yeah, that was, that's I saw a tankathon. Somebody posted it. I think it was a Sharks fan posted a tankathon screenshot, and I saw the Bruins on there, and I was like, whoa, whoa. Shrinka says they lost so much of their identity. It's actually really funny because Charlie Coyle, who is now a Av, um, scored for the Avalanche today because he's an Av. He scored for them, and that was, part of the equation for getting the Habs back on track for winning against the Blue Jackets, because at one point it was 1-1 and it seemed really rough out there, blah blah blah. But yeah, I think that's the kind of guy that first just seems like a Bruin to me. And not to mention Brad Marchand, who we saw in our building just look like a shell of his former self. Um, it just doesn't feel like it. It just doesn't. It just doesn't feel like the Bruins. And the same with that Philly doesn't feel like Philly. Um, it's not like I just don't recognize them. Um, but I still enjoy. I still enjoy beating them anyways. Uh, on today's Locked On Canadians, Ian Bovair said something about how about dancing on the Bruins' grave, and frankly, like, if we're dancing on the Bruins' grave, I said it in the comments, I'll say it again. I feel like I'm in the club and the DJ's got Toxic by Britney Spears on, and I am ready to get my dance. Like, we are ready to go and we are dancing. So um why don't you guys give me a little bit of direction? That that was so backhanded. No, I just meant as in, if you guys have anything that you'd like me to talk about, you'd like me to focus on, please do. I'm happy to. I'm, you know, just doing this by myself, and anything you guys want to talk about. Um, I'll revert this back. It's not an overtime thing, but I will revert this back to Rick Springhetti's question, which is about Kapanen and Armia. Oh, Adam says, hell yeah. Okay, give me the minute to talk about this. Guhle, question mark? Question mark? Exclamation point? Guhle? Man, it is so good to have that guy back. They've missed him. They really have missed him, and it's he just really changes a lot about how I feel when we have like 4 out of 6 defensemen on the ice. Like, it's really he's just so calm, and he's just so steadying to me, like, to the team, also not to me personally, but also the team. Um, it just genuinely feels like he's calms things down. Um, and it's weird because we've seen a lot of offense, or I feel like Kaiden Guhle never got the credit for how much he tried offensively. I always felt like he was trying. In the last year at least, I always felt like he was jumping up when he could, but he was always like responsible. I think he was always I don't think he quite felt as comfortable as he does now. We are seeing him jump up into the play, which is so exciting to see. We're seeing him use that great shot. We're seeing him use his like the skating. Just it's so good to see, because as we've all read about, heard about, all these scouting reports about Kaiden Guhle and how he has a little bit more offense. Personally, I think it's okay if he's just a mainly defensive defenseman, but I think this new NHL, even your defensive defensemen need to be part of your offense. If they're not scoring, that's that, but like kind of sending the puck up the ice, helping your offensively gifted defenseman. Ideally, I do think a pairing like Hudson and Guhle is a good one. in the future, Hudson, Reinbacher, where you have one defensively minded guy who still has hands, who still can skate, who still has the IQ and has a shot or something similar that like that's special, combined with a guy who's just straight up special. Um, I think there's this like tendency to be like Kaiden Guhle only needs to focus on offense or defense to make up for the defensive mistakes Lane Hudson's going to do. Now, Lane Hudson is not like the defensive defenseman that Kaiden Guhle is. He does not like he's not like defensively gifted in the way that he's offensively gifted, but I do think he is defensively a lot better than he gets credit for. Which what that means is I think it frees Kaiden Guhle up because he doesn't have to make up for defense the way that people are constantly kind of acting like he would. Because it's really not that much more that he needs to make up for, which allows him then to also step up offensively. Does that make sense? Do you guys kind of understand what I'm trying to say here? I guess what I'm trying to say is Kaiden Guhle has been limited on other pairings he's been on because he's had to be the defensive, responsible guy on that pairing, and he's had to make up for a lot. With Matheson, you have him kind of going full send. Someone's got to catch those mistakes. With Savard, you've just got to have someone playing defense. What other pairings has he been on? Those are the two like main ones I can think of. Even Hudson and him before his injury, like even that was I don't know what changed necessarily. Well, I think Hudson's gotten better, I think is what's changed. Mainly what I'm trying to say is he's had to be the more defensively responsible guy in his pairing, which is still true. But there's less to worry about because Lane Hudson's defensive issues have been greatly overstated. So there's less of a gap there for Guhle to be worried about, which then means that he can step up offensively because guess what? When you're with Lane Hudson, you're going to get a lot of ozone starts. You have a player who's just willing to make some amazing plays, has so much creativity. So that's kind of on his play. But let's talk about what my cave woman brain wants to talk about, which is holy hell has he been physical. Oh my god. He's been out for what 24 games or something insane like that, and he comes back and first game he's I feel like he was tentative, he was a little bit feeling out the game, which fair enough. That is you'd expect that. And then almost immediately he started doing really sick things, both offensively stepping up, but also, man, has he been physical. It's so good to see because for years, I think, or I say years like he's been in the NHL for 5 years. Since the start, I think we've heard that Kaiden Guhle plays this kind of nasty, physical, punishing style. And he just never really I don't think he was using it like all that much. He'd use it, but it wasn't kind of sparely. But with the recent development, I think I don't know what it is, but now he's starting to play really physical. Oh, the cat's gone. Never noticed. He's starting to play really physical. He's starting to throw those hits, take on those guys. Just I wonder if it's because he feels the need to be I guess playing next to Lane Hudson, who's not gonna beat guys like physically. Um maybe he feels like he has to be the really physical player. I don't know what's happening, but I like it. I like it. I like that. I saw some people saying that they did not like that Guhle fought Totally understand that. Like, when I think of it rationally as a rational person, I'm like, no, we need him healthy. Obviously, we need him healthy. That's the number one priority. But I think at a certain point, when you're asked to fight enough, you have to. Listen, if you're gonna throw the kind of hits that Kaiden Guhle was throwing, if you are gonna play that rough, you're gonna get, like, a guy's gonna ask you to dance, even if it's a clean hit, even whatever. Eventually, some other guy's gonna want you to pay for that, I guess. Um, and I don't think that it's useful to constantly say no to those. Um, I think that there's some value in, I don't want to say not looking like a coward, but I mean, as in, like, I think there's value in when you're challenged, not stepping back. There's clearly, like, guys were hitting him left and right. They were clearly, like, after that one big hit. And he, after a while, I imagine that somebody asked him to go and he went. So that's kind of what I mean by the fact that, like, sometimes you can't say no. And it's not in the way where, like, somebody jumps you and so you can't say no, but more in the way that it's for the sake of not having to fight so much later. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Um, but Ramelli says Guhle said many times he wants to add a more physical aspect to this game. Yeah, I think he's wanted this, but for some reason he just hasn't been able to. I think it's a little mix of he's been thrown in so hard that he's had to be way more, like, focused on defending in a way that's, like, super responsible rather than hitting. Um, I think he probably feels stronger. Um, I wonder if the cut resistant gear is making him feel invincible. I don't know. But why don't I come back in the next segment? And we'll move on to the third. We'll have a really quick third, and then we will have our questions and answers, our overtime segment. But before we start our third segment, I would like to send you guys over to earlier Andrew, and have him tell you guys a little bit about Inchoo Bijoux, our great partners. Let's go.
We are so excited to tell you about our new partner here at Game Over Montreal, a delightfully witchy goth and glam jewelry store making handcrafted art that varies from subtle silver to gold pieces to glamorous bespoke. Inchoo Bijoux is more than just a company. They've built a community through advocacy and a welcoming attitude that has made them an institution here in Montreal. Located in the historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, Inchoo Bijoux also runs seasonal themed markets called Maleficarum Market, or Marché Maleficarum en français, where artisans from all over get together and showcase and sell their wares. Drop by 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise, Suite 278, and say hi to Astrid and the Wicked team, or head to inchoobijou.com and enhance your style. The next Maleficarum Market will be on the weekend of February 8th and 9th. We'll see you there. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out.
I'm back, and I am not muted, Bernardo. Thank you very much. I just really quickly, I did see a conversation happening earlier from Riv, who I think is a new listener or first-time chat participant. Anyways, really happy to have you here. Who says, as a Habs fan from Wyoming, always love the Habs, especially when they help us out. And lucky heart emoji always. Completely agree. And Claire kind of asked a little bit about how they became a Habs fan of being from Wyoming, and just kind of grandfather got them into it. He was born in Montreal, and you know what? I feel like this is a great time to be a very active Habs fan. Um, oh, oh, excuse me. I see Claire's going to bed. Good night, Claire. Thank you for stopping by. Um, really appreciate it. as per always. Just gonna catch up sometime more. Just to kind of close up our last segment on Kaiden Guhle, Trinka says Guhle had a more physical game in the WHL, but when he came up to the NHL, he realized that everybody saw the hits coming and had to readjust. The physical game will come back, I think. I think that's true. I think we're starting to see it come back. So that's cool. I'm going to check in on our chat. I am seeing um some discussion about signing Dvorak. We'll talk about that as well. Just gonna remember, just gonna sorry. Just catching up, and I see earlier Mark from Game Over Vancouver had stopped by, said, like how's it like to have a team in a card spots that wins? Wow. Let's try that again. Mark said, how's it like to have a team in a wild card spot that wins games? Um, you know what? There's a little bit of up and down on the Habs, but right now feels great. Right now it feels great. The Canucks are not doing themselves any favors. I believe they got shut out by the Kraken last game, last I checked. And that's a row Shaggy. That's a oof. Um Booley Nations rise up. Hudson not having a point. I can't remember who said that. I was scrolling a little too fast, but somebody pointed out that Hudson didn't have a point today, which is it really a Habs game? A Habs win without a Hudson point? Surely not. But hey, we can't have everything. We did see a Evans and Armia point on the empty netter, which is something I want to talk about. So I'm gonna bring up the question I kept from Rick from earlier. Rick says, question for everyone: should Kapanen dress for the next game in place of Armia? Love Armia, but he's obviously hurting. Maybe dressing Kapanen would give the Habs fourth line some offensive punch. Kind of going off that question. Now, am I insane in thinking that the fourth line is looking so much better in the last two games? Am I making stuff up in my head? Am I just desperate for the fourth line to be better again? And by the fourth line, I mean the duo of Armia and Evans, more than the line itself, because that third man is rotating in and out. It's Pizzetta on the lineup sheet, but it's not in a significant way. I'm gonna check the time on ice. Woof. All right. Uh, that is surely a yeah. So I'm seeing the time of ice on Pizzetta is 7 minutes 47 cents. 7.4 minutes. And the next on top of that is Evans and Armia, who are both around 12. So yeah, it's clear that honestly, Pizzetta getting 7 minutes is more than I expect him to most of the time. But but even then, I think that like Kev's Best says the Armia Evans featuring line. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just them and then somebody who I think Heineman being out for so long was a little bit disrupted things. They didn't quite look the same without him, and then when he came back, I was expecting them to come back, and then they didn't. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think I'm starting to see Jake Armia get it back together. Not to the same level, but I don't think it was ever going to be Jake Evans scores a goal every 5 games level. Um, but I think it's getting better. I don't know. Um, Ramelli says Armia still can't take a shot. Uh, yeah, yeah, I agree, but I think he's definitely still hurt. I do think he's hurt, but I'm seeing him do more of the good stuff that we, like to see Joel Armia doing, which is winning those board battles, just out muscling guys, just being really strong being strong on the puck, just kind of the penalty killing has been great. And I think that's honestly a lot on Josh Anderson. Um, but I don't know. I don't I don't want to sit Armia. I don't think it's the best option for a team that's so on the precipice, that's so on knife's edge for getting in. Um, I think that's they're getting better, question mark. I would let that ride a little bit longer, see what works. Um, Riv kind of points out really the big thing here is that I don't think Marty will deviate from the lineup until a loss. Seems a bit risky for his coaching style, and I agree with that. I think like poor Arbor Jack guy is gonna sit for a little while, which I don't love, to be honest. I think that they should keep him warm, for lack of a better term. But I do think he's not really changing. I think he's gonna have to put Kapanen in. Let's just say that. I don't think he's changing taking Armia out, but Pizzetta I think can come in and out. Alexandra says that I don't want to be negative, but Kapanen was really bad at the beginning of the year. Um, yeah, and that was, a few months ago. Uh, I think that that's uh like not I don't say that in a dismissive way. I just think that like him playing in the SHL and again, I don't keep up with the SHL very much, but from what I've heard, he was doing great there, being given a lot more than players of his usual draft profile do. Um I don't know, I'd like to see him. I think that's where I'm at is I'd like to see him. I don't think that um I don't think he can be any worse than Michael Pizzetta. Romelli says, don't sit Armia, sit Pez for Kapanen. I do think that Pez goes out of the lineup and Kapanen goes in the lineup. Where he slots in is a bit of that's the question mark. Um, Michael earlier had said, I don't think Kapanen is a fourth liner. He'll get a chance in the top 6. Correct. I do think I'd like to see him in the top 6. But can you justify taking Emil Heineman out? Um, I think today was the first like real bad Patrick Laine game in a while, defensively anyways. Um, but and him and Newhook and Heineman worked real hard to clean that up. For when he was making some bad decisions, just kind of making up for it. Um, which for the record, this is not this is not a shitting on Patrick Laine segment. I think he's been very good. Very like he's been forechecking. He's been like back checking a lot. Um he's been working hard in the non-negotiables. He's not and he's never going to be Nick Suzuki. But I think he's been a little bit more responsible. I just think today was a bad game. It happens. Best says, I've been loving Emil in the second, and I agree. I don't know if you can take him out. Maybe like I don't know. I think what Marty will do is sit Pez and just swap him in for Kapanen. Um, and let's see how that goes. I think that would be the question. I don't think you sit Armia. I don't think in a situation like this where the team is at, you cannot sit Yoel Armia. Um, he hasn't been so effective. He hasn't been the spark that the fourth line was earlier, the kind of line that started the game the way Marty liked to. But I think that I don't think he's hurting the team. Um, so yeah, um, I don't think you take out Yoel Armia. I think is what it comes down to. I see we're talking defense pairings. How about we talk about that? But first, I'm going to switch us over to our overtime. Um, and our overtime segment. And as I do that, I am also going to um, talk a little bit about Game Over's Patreon. Um, so, are you looking for ways to help an upstart media company employing over 30 young journalists across Canada? We are, by the way, a Canadian company, proudly Canadian. If you have a few spare bucks kicking around, you can head over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/the Game Over Network. There you'll find multiple tiers featuring different rewards and goodies for helping us grow. There's extra access, exclusive looks behind the scene, Discord benefits, merch discounts, opportunities to give us feedback, and you can join us for special shows live, where you interact with the hosts as we launch new ways to improve your experience. But these are trying times, so I totally understand if you're not able to help and spare a few dollars. We do have a free tier available, so you don't miss out. And there's lots of other ways to support us, kind of boosting our stuff on social media, interacting with stuff we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we are on Twitter, we're obviously on YouTube, we do our YouTube shorts, and we're also on Blue Sky. I believe we are also on Facebook. Not sure about that one. But if you really want to help us, make sure to click like and subscribe on YouTube. Rate us 5 stars on your podcast app of choice. And share our work on social media, as I said. Our Patreon page, again, is patreon.com/the Game Over Network. And check that out for some tantalizing goodies. Also, okay, we're in this overtime segment. First, let's go back to the Dvorak conversation. Do we sign Dvorak? I don't think so. Um, this is not an original thought, so obviously, but I don't think you can afford to have Armia and Dvorak right now. You have the Habs do not lack for prospects who can slot into their bottom six. We have a lot of guys who can do that. And I think that's where you don't spend your money. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. You can't afford to have Armia and Dvorak at the same time. I think Dvorak has been underappreciated at some points, unremarkable at others, and straight up bad at sometimes in his time at Montreal. And I think you let him walk. And Cole Caulfield, sorry. This is Betty. Sorry. Frederick, I guess kind of along those lines asked, should we even re-sign Armia? Listen, my Jake Armia loving heart says yes. I would love that. But I think the big question is, it does really come down to the price. Depends on the price. I think those are two trains of thoughts. I think Yoel Armia does a lot of effective things that we are forgetting about right now because of the fact that he's injured and not playing his best. But he is effective in his ways. But he needs to be cheap. He needs to be cheaper than his current deal. And players don't generally do that. As Mark constantly says, players don't generally resign with the same team for a discount. Um, if he's willing to do that, it's a conversation worth having. I don't think that that's not a straight no to me, the way that the Dvorak question is a straight no to me, because of the fact that we have a lot of bottom six centers in our prospect pool that we can slot in there. Bernardo says Caulfield would demand a trade. Uh, Listen, man, on one hand, we have trading away his buddy, Dvorak, but on the other hand, we have having his buddy, Nick Suzuki. So which friendship wins? Is it the power of America that wins between Dvorak and Christian Dvorak is American, right? Let me just check that really quick. Let me fact check that because that feels so real. And I said that so confidently. And he is American. Cool. I remember that. Yeah. So I think the power of America, does that win? Or is it the power of friendship and straight up just great chemistry? Straight up the great kind of chemistry that leads to the goal that we saw today from Chris Caulfield. Nope, Cole Caulfield. Let's say hello to the people in our chat. I see Vaguely Sober here. Hello. Um, I see a lot of our usuals and some new folks. So thank you so much for stopping by. I think win versus the Bruins always leads that. Yeah, Adam kind of just says that it's more to look at the entirety of Dvorak's performance over his contract, and other than that stretch, it's been bad to meh. Yeah. Um, I think you have the face-off thing. He is their most reliable face-off guy. That is true. Maybe you can get that from the 2C you get this summer, which they really will. Dvorak divorce. Yeah, it's gonna, I think that like he's a lot more. I think like a lot of these guys, he's a lot more than he shows on camera, which fair enough, totally understand. Maybe he doesn't want to smile on camera. That's up to him. Uh, but people come and go. That's a really philosophical way of saying that, but I think I think if we make the playoffs, he's going to be a big part of it. But ultimately, I don't think he's the kind of guy you keep. Again, you have so much in your in your prospect pool, and again, I understand that you can't um rely on these things. You can't. Prospects are fickle. They can be something and they can be nothing. Um, they're magic beans. I think you have enough in your pool to make up for it. Drink that says we don't tell him to smile, just like we don't tell women to smile. Yeah. Beck point. Adam packs out. Adam points out that Beck was a face-off ace in junior. Yeah, and that's juniors. Apparently, he really one of the if I could be making this up, but apparently he talked a little bit about how it's harder here, which understandable. It's the NHL. Um, you could always use more face-off winners. And you could always use a little bit more evenness in your handedness. Evenness in your handedness. Um, Kev, Kev's the best says he's been showing more emotions as of late. I was surprised to see shades of a smile after his goal tonight. Yeah. Frederick asks, who will Nick ask to watch over his dog? I assume if Dvorak is gone. I don't know. Trika says Montembeau seems very responsible. I would also, dare I say, Carrier? Maybe? Question mark? Do you guys have any questions that you sent earlier that I may have missed? Please just drop them in the chat again. Would love to touch on that. Love to touch on the things that you'd like to talk about. Um just gonna roll it back a little bit. Yeah, Bernardo earlier pointed out that Nick on the Sportsnet kind of interview between the two periods said the Slav is bad at trash talk, and that was funny. Yeah, it doesn't shock me, man. It seems like he would be bad at trash talk, but he's so expressive. Like his face is so expressive that I'm sure his like big like stupid like look at me, I'm just a silly guy smile after he like wrecks you probably like pisses everybody off, which again is the hayuk effect that Andrew talked about. Bernard asked me who gets custody of Lane. This is important. Are we talking in terms of Dvorak being gone? I don't know who gets custody of Lane. That's a great question. Um, I could just point out that getting Hudson to possibly take care of Nick's dog, babysit Nick's dog would be would be a good idea just to give him more interest and hobbies that aren't just skating. Um, who gets custody of Lane? I don't know. That's a big question. I don't know. I think ultimately you give him to Nick Suzuki. Here, have another child. Here's your child. It's really funny. I saw a picture of Nick Suzuki as a rookie. If you Google Nick Suzuki first NHL game, it's probably like the picture that'll show up like 5 times, where he's like got this big like smile, but he's like a baby. He's got this like soft ass chin, like he's just like grinning, and he's wearing 88, I think. Uh, which I would assume is Marc Bergevin's doing. I don't know. Um, Better guess, how many points do you guys think is needed for the playoffs? Bernard says, I think the cutoff will be like 89 points. Yeah, I think that that's right about right about it. Um, I don't want the Habs to get in with right at the cutoff. But like I don't want them to flirt with that line of like Frederick kind of says that if that's the case, then it would be 4 more wins in 7 games. I just don't love the idea of it being that close. Just win. I don't know. Usurp the Sens. I don't know. Let's dream a little, guys. Let's dare to dream a little bigger. The Habs are going to get into the playoffs, and it's going to be wild card spot number 1 because they're going to usurp the Sens. The Sens are without their captain, and the Sens are poo poo. So there we go. Bernard says, I saw the Boston commenters were like, Hudson is 21, but looking at him, you'd think it's the reverse. He doesn't look like a little bit like he's 12. That is incredibly funny, and totally, I get it. Frederick says, let's hope the Devils beat the Rangers on Saturday afternoon. I cannot depend on the Devils for anything, but hopefully, the Rangers are more interested in beating themselves, apparently, so I'll take it. I'm gonna there's a conversation I remember I really wanted to talk about a little bit, um, that I'm gonna read back a little bit, but last call for questions while I do that. And if I can't find them, I will not find them. Um, I can't remember. I think it had something to do with the defenseman. I don't know. Uh, says we've cornered the market on tiny, babyface, extremely talented Americans. I'll take it, baby. I'll take it. we have stolen your talent. I was actually having this funny conversation with somebody about how the only bad thing about Lane Hudson turning out to be as sick as he is that he's American and he's gonna like play against Team Canada in the Olympics. Um, and I was like, that sucks. I'm not gonna think about it because I just want to enjoy his great player. And I'm such a hater that I might like be like, I don't know about that. No, I think the positive spin to that is we've taken him away from an American team. No American team gets to have him. And you know what? If he's part of a team who brings a cup back to Montreal, all is forgiven. Bernardo Sonia says, how does it feel to have Charlie Coyle on the ads? It feels like seeing a rather handsome man on a team that I watch, and frankly, I have already forgotten that he was a Bruin because you got to do what you got to do, baby. Okay, so I am signing off. Thank you so much for joining me. I know today has been a little bit oh, sorry, Bernardo, I want to touch on that. Yes, now I remember. It was a conversation about Savard. They should sit Savard. Will they? No. That's the conversation. They 100% should. They will not. And I will simply watch them. I will simply be clenched every single second that David Savard is on the ice. If this truly was a fair, like, your play gets you in, I don't think Savard is not playing, but there's other factors to this, and I understand that. So I don't know, buddy. They should sit Savard. Will they? Nope. Okay. Now I'm gonna sign off. Thank you everybody for joining me. What a game. What a win. I'm sorry I've been a little bit scattered today. I think it's because it's been a while since I've streamed. And I'm just so happy to be back. Love having you guys, love talking hockey with you guys, I think is what I was trying to say. So yeah, I will see you, I believe it's on Saturday, and I will also see you on Sunday. So you're gonna be seeing a lot of me. All right. I love you guys. Question mark. No, I love you guys. Exclamation point. And I will see you Saturday. Bye.